Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are the last and final group, and today we will talk about the sensory and motor mechanism in plants and animals. But in order for you to understand our topic better, I will tell you a brief introduction about our topic, starting with the sensory mechanism. From the name itself, sensory sense. It is how an organism senses change in its surroundings or in its own body and process it. It uses specialized organs like the eyes, ears, skin, tongue, and nose to detect the stimuli, then sends this information to the nervous system so it knows how to respond. When the brain decides what to do, motor mechanism takes part. Motor mechanism is a process or system in animals that produce movement in response to a stimulus. It involves muscle, nerves, and other bone structure working together to allow an organism to move or perform specific action. Now, I keep talking about the stimulus or stimuli, but what is exactly is a stimulus? Stimulus is anything that causes a response or reaction in an organism, and it can be something from the environment like light, sound, or temperature, or from inside the body like hunger or pain that triggers a sensory or behavioral reaction. For example is a hot stove. When you touch a hot stove, you will feel the heat. But when you pull your hand away, that is a motor mechanism because you gave a reaction. In order to detect the stimuli, we use the sensory receptor. Sensory receptor is a specialized cell that sends change and converts them into nerve signal that the nervous system can interpret. In simple terms, it is a body sensor that notices something happening and tells your brain about it. Now, in order for you to understand the process better, we will talk about the process and main parts of sensory and motor mechanism. Starting with the sensory neuron or sensory mechanism. A sensory receptor in the organ sends a change. Then, receptor converts the stimulus into electrical signal. This is called transduction. When the message travels along with the specialized cell to the central nervous system, which is the CNS, that includes our brain and spinal cord. When the nerve signal or the signal travels to the brain decision happens. The CNS interprets the signal and decides what action is needed. After that, motor neuron takes part or motor mechanism takes part. The nervous system sends a signal through a motor neuron to the muscle or glands, then muscle contracts and the gland secretes substance to perform a specific reaction.
So good morning, good evening everyone. I am the presenter of Group 10 and today I am going to talk about types of sensory receptors. So first, what is sensory receptors? So sensory receptors are actually specialized cells or specialized neurons that are located in the endings of our body. A stimulus can be light, can be pressure, can be vibration, can be texture, and can even be temperature or chemicals or pain. So sensory receptors actually helps us detect what is going on around our environment, and they act like as messengers. So when receptors detect a stimulus, they actually send these signals to the brain, to the central nervous system. And before they send these signals to the brain, they actually convert those signals to what we call electrical signals, and that process is called transduction. So when those signals reach the brain then interprets it as what we know, how we smell, how it tastes like, how it feels like, and and so sensory neurons helps us understand what is going on around our environment and helps us understand what is going on. So the first type of sensory receptors is the mechanoreceptors. So mechanoreceptors are sensory receptors that detects physical movement. So they activate when something touches your skin, when your body is stretched or moved. So when you hear sounds, so yes, sounds can be a mechanoreceptor because there are tiny hair cells in your ear that actually detects vibration. So, and then your brain interprets that to the sound. So an example of this is when someone or somebody taps your shoulder and you feel it. So those receptors actually detect that touch, and then they convert that signals to electrical signals, and then they go through the nervous system up to the brain, and the brain interprets it as the touch. That's why we can feel those. So mechanoreceptors is located in the different parts of our body, such as the skin, our muscles and joints, and also in our inner ear. So because of them, we can actually move our body, and we can control our body movements. So the next sensory receptors is the chemoreceptors. So chemoreceptors is actually it detects chemical substances. So instead of physical movement, it detects chemical substances. So for example, when we taste or when we smell something, the chemical substances in our food interacts with the receptors, for example, in our mouth. So in our tongue, we have receptors there. So the chemical substances in our food actually interacts with our tongue. So those signals actually, again, uh, it turns into electrical signals, and then it goes through our nervous system, and then it goes to our brain, where our brain interprets the taste as tasting bad, tasting good, like salty, sweet, and bitter, etc. And the same process go through our nose. So when our nose is so when a smell enters our nose, so those receptors in our nose actually detects it, and those signals is then converted to electrical signals, and those electrical signals moves to our nervous system up to our brain, and that smell is interpreted to our brain, where it smells good, it smells bad, and etc. So chemoreceptors is actually very important to our body because chemoreceptors helps maintain oxygen levels, carbon dioxide, and pH level in our body. So it also regulates breathing, and it maintain our body control and body movement. And the next type of sensory receptors is the thermoreceptors. So thermoreceptors actually detects temperature and changes in temperature outside or inside our body. So it can detect temperature in our environment. So these receptors actually allows us to feel whether something is hot or something is cold. So for example, when you touch a cup of coffee, for example, this is a cup of coffee. So when you touch it, you have receptors in your skin, right? So those stimuli is then detected by the receptors, and those signals is then it travels to your central nervous system, and then up to the brain. So when it reaches your brain, it actually interprets that the something is hot, causing you to move your or pull your hand away. Like for example, this is hot. When I touch it, and I quickly pull my hand away because it is hot. So that's how fast the process actually occurs. So the next also pala, thermoreceptors actually also helps regulate internal stable internal environment, because it helps us respond to different types of for example, we sweat because it's hot, and we shiver because it's cold. So the next type of sensory receptors is the nociceptors. So nociceptors are specialized dangerous sensors that alert the body to harmful or painful stimuli. So nociceptors is actually detects pain and harmful things outside our body, or in our environment, or it can detect a potential harm to our body. So it is activated when you have an injury, when there's an extreme temperature or strong pressure, or harmful chemicals also. So for instance, you accidentally touched a very hot substance, and then, or you step onto something sharp. So um, you quickly pull your feet away because it is causing you pain. So pain is a very not very good thing to feel, but pain actually helps us, and it actually serves as a warning sign for us to because it tells us that something is wrong, and that we should act upon it, or we should move away for that harmful situation. So the last sensory receptors is the photoreceptors. So photoreceptors is just from the word itself. Photoreceptors detects light, or and the light is then interpreted by the brain as the photo, or the vision that we see, or the image that we see. So how does it work? So the light detects the receptors detects the light, and then the light signals is then converted into electrical signals, and then it travels through your nervous system, and then goes to your brain. So your brain interprets it as as your vision, as your image, as your photos, as what you see in our world. So it is located in our eyes, especially in the retina, and without photoreceptors, our vision would actually be impossible. So there are two main types of photoreceptors. Those are rods and cones. So rods is actually the one to help see movement, to detect movement and see light in low areas. And the cones is the one that helps us see colors, or helps us to see more defined texture. So it helps that. So, and that is how types of sensory receptors. And how does it work? So